Welcome to Ditch Auto. My name's Jared, and today we're taking a look at the Canon 80D. Now, I've been talking a lot about Sony stuff, for probably the last year, because I did switch over to Sony and have been using Sony cameras for a while. But prior to that, I have been a Canon shooter for over 10 years, and so I have a lot of experience with Canon equipment, and I'm really excited to see Canon kind of stepping up into the more modern technology game, and you're seeing a lot of that in this 80D. Now, I rented this camera for a couple of reasons, and I'll talk about that a little bit more as we get through this video. But I rented this camera for a wedding this last weekend. I still shoot and film weddings, and we needed this camera for a photo booth, and even though it didn't pan out, we did use it when we were filming, and we used it as a back camera, which was more of a static shot. But this camera is just fantastic, and it's given me a little bit of a rekindling in my love for Canon equipment. So this is a 24.2 megapixel camera. It's a crop sensor, has a 1.6 crop, so it's not a full frame like maybe your Canon 5D, but none of these cameras have ever been anything more than crop sensor. So I rented it with the lens that is the 18 to 135 millimeter kit lens, and I'm gonna do a separate video on this lens because I really liked the lens. It's a kit lens, but I really liked it, especially for shooting video. It was just a great lens, and so check in the notes below in the comment section as well for additional information on this lens and another video that we're going to put up shortly. So the 80D, these typically have been a pretty good sized body ever since. The Canon body fits well in the hand. It's a handful over on this side for me, which is a departure from what I'm used to lately with Sony. The Sony cameras are pretty small, but this 80D definitely has a nice beefy body to it, and it feels good in the hand. Everything is positioned well, and it's comfortable to hold on to. Just has a lot of the prior versions of the kind of, before you jump into full frame line of these Canons have been. So all the buttons are typical with the Canon. You've got your menu and info button over here. You have start and stop for recording, and then a rocker switch that takes you into video mode. And then of course start and stop can get you live view in the back of the camera as well when you're shooting photos. So a lot of the buttons and switches are all pretty common for Canon. It has a couple of custom modes in here as well. And so what I really liked about this camera, and the first time that I actually used it was for video. So I had it mounted on a tripod, I had a wireless microphone going into it, and we were using it just to shoot a static shot. And so the face detection setting, which will follow along, and you can see this on the back of the screen, it follows with the movement and stays locked on a face, which means that you're getting focus on that person as that person moves around a little bit. Now, you can confuse that by having too many faces in the shot or by that person moving around too fast, but it does a great job at follow focus, basically, which I think is an extremely important feature to have on a camera, especially if you're going to set that camera there and you want it to maintain focus on something that may be moving around in the frame. So this camera has phase and cross type, autofocus 45 on each, so 45 phase and 45 cross type on the autofocus, which is a lot lower than a lot of other cameras that are out there right now, but it performed really well, and I was not saddened by that. Now, I didn't do any fast action shooting or anything like that, so who knows how it would perform, and I just haven't tested in that area. But I would say, I would feel safe to say that this camera performs on par with what you would expect in the Canon 5D Mark III, which of course is a bit older technology, but I shot with that camera for almost about 3.5 years, and shooting with this camera, I felt like I was shooting with a 5D Mark III. They've just added so much good stuff to this camera. Now on the back is the typical articulating screen that Canon is known for with this line of cameras. So that flips around. It's a 3-inch rear touch screen. The touch was nice because when you're shooting video, you can't make any adjustments on the camera without seeing those vibrations and movement. And so what's nice about the touchscreen is you could just really gently touch the back of the screen and make adjustments to the camera, as well as touching for focus. Now, Canon has this kind of flip back screen, which, there's pros and cons to this. The pros are that you can flip the screen around and you can film and you can see what's going on. Like if you're a vlogger like a Casey Neistat, you can see the screen or whatnot. When you flip it around to use the screen on the back, like if you want to articulate, the only thing that I've ever found that's really annoying about this setup is that the screen is way out here. You're trying to center this with and pay attention to what you're filming, but you're looking over here on a screen. And I kind of prefer having a screen that articulates from the center of the camera. It just feels a bit more natural to me, unless I had this set up on like a handheld rig or something. However, it is nice. It didn't take me too long to get used to it again. So the 3-inch display on the back also is a really vibrant display. The previews that I was getting when I was shooting some photos, it was just a really brilliant display. I was pretty impressed. Now, ISO performance has always been, kind of an issue with Canon. Going into those extreme low light situations becomes tough because ISO really has to work hard to give you proper exposure. And with ISO on this camera, I felt that in most situations, you can almost put it on auto ISO and shoot and then allow it to kind of go up as far as it needs to go, and you're gonna get a pretty decent image. However, if you go into expanded ISO, which is as high as 25,600, you start to run into some issues with usability of your image. The image starts to fall apart, like with most cameras when you get to the higher end. But this camera is pretty solid, almost all the way up to the standard 16,000 ISO range that it comes before you go into the expanded mode. So it does shoot full HD video, no 4K or anything like that, but it does shoot full HD video at 30 frames per second, which is good, but it's kind of a bummer because we like to be able to shoot up to 60 frames per second at least in full HD so that you can get that slow motion effect when you are in post-production. But I was unable to find any settings that would allow me to take it down or take it up to 60 frames. I look to be stuck at 30 frames per second. This lens combination with this camera, I was really impressed with. It feels good in the hand. It fits your hand really well. It's not too heavy. This lens has stabilization built in, and it is the kit lens that is available. It has the, there's that little bracket that you could put on the bottom of the camera to get an automatic focus and zoom, which is a really neat feature. It's something that I haven't played with, but I've seen other reviewers post about it, and it does look like a pretty cool feature. So this camera, it just performs well. It now has Wi-Fi and NFC in it, which definitely are features that I have wanted in a Canon camera for a long time. And now with the Canon 5D Mark IV that's been recently released or announced, they're also adding that functionality. For me, that was all about being able to transfer images from my camera to my phone easily without cables or messing around with pulling cards out or doing anything like that. That was one of the main reasons that I switched to Sony, that and really high ISO performance. So using this camera this weekend and this past week has just really been exciting to me because I love Canon still. Even though I'm shooting Sony, I'm not a person that's like, oh, well, I can't talk about Canon or love Canon or whatnot anymore. This camera right here makes me feel, I have feels for my Canon days, and it's just a really nice camera. So, just like all the other cameras, DSLR cameras, you can use a multitude of lenses with this camera. This lens is the EFS version of their lens series, and of course this camera has a pop-up flash, which is typical of this line of cameras. The pop-up flash works okay, but most of the time you're going to get better results with an external flash that you can mount on the hot shoe. So other things that I could say about this camera, on the side here, it does have now both a mic and a headphone jack, which means you could plug in a mic, plug in headphones, and you can monitor your audio in the camera, which is a fantastic addition. We also have a USB here, a mini USB and an HDMI out. HDMI out you can use for using like a preview monitor or a digital recorder such as an Atomos. And so instead of internally recording into the camera, you can use an external recorder for that, which will give you, improved quality. So this camera is just great. I really enjoyed using it. I'm kind of bummed to be sending it back, and it really makes me want to go out and buy one. I don't necessarily know if I will because I'm so invested in Sony equipment, including lenses and all of that, but it definitely is a step in the right direction for Canon, and I'm excited to have used this camera. Now we're going to be coming back pretty soon here and releasing a whole series of how-to videos for this camera, such as how to use Wi-Fi and NFC so that you can transfer images to your phone, how to use some of the other features of the camera that are pretty cool and exciting to have. So make sure to subscribe to our channel here on Ditch Auto. We'll be announcing and releasing those videos pretty soon. Like I said, I'm also going to talk about this lens here in another video, so make sure to check out that video. Links are in the description below. And if you have any thoughts about this camera, please leave them in the comment section below as well. We'd love to discuss this camera and talk about the pros and cons and just how this camera works with you in the comment section below. Thank you so much for checking out our video here on Ditch Auto, and we hope to see you soon.